Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet's 4th DLC titled Dissonance of the Nexus in the West, aka Diva of the Snowfields in Japan, has come out just over 2 weeks ago, bringing some more fan-favorite characters from the series into the game: Sachi, YUNA, Eiji, and Seven. But how does the DLC compare to the previous 3 DLC chapters? Welcome everyone, I'm Gamerturk and this is my ultimate review for Fatal Bullet DLC4 Dissonance of the Nexus. As usual, like my Alicization Explained series and my recent playthroughs, you can find timestamps in the description and the pinned comment to navigate freely through this review and skip certain bits if they do not interest you. The description and pinned comment also feature my ongoing giveaway that you can join, as well as Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links if you're interested in any kind of SAO material and want to support my channel at the same time. But with that out of the way, let's start with Dissonance of the Nexus. There are 3 aspects that I feel are important: story, content, and characterization, 2 of which the base game failed at and all 3 that the 3 DLC chapters failed at completely. So let's begin with the story that takes place after the main game's true ending. While there is not much to spoil here, you can still choose to skip ahead if you want to experience the DLC story yourself. The DLC was heavily advertised as 2 parallel stories, and well, to a certain extent that is true. We have one storyline that involves Kirito and the main cast following some rumors about ghosts in the new area, coming across Eiji from Ordinal Scale looking for someone, which we all know is YUNA but can't be explicitly told so because otherwise the plot just doesn't work due to reasons I'll mention in a bit, and eventually finding a copy of Sachi somehow, and we have to save her before she's consumed by an expanding black box in her consciousness. The second parallel storyline follows the alternative GGO cast, which you should totally watch the anime of if you haven't done so already, also being joined by the GGO newcomer Seven and eventually crossing paths with the Diva YUNA from Ordinal Scale that we never tell Eiji about because nobody bothers to mention it during the actual main story of the DLC to avoid what could have become a neat struggle between the cast members. And while the stories are running quote-unquote parallel, they are not really that. I was hoping for a more free-form approach when they advertised 2 parallel stories, but instead the story feels like your usual very linear story. It's just that the game forces you to switch to tend to Kirito and Co for about 10 minutes, then sends you off to the AGGO cast for the next 10 minutes, and so on. It certainly is more of a sequential linear story of all things than actually being parallel, which makes the interconnected parts of both stories to be a little forced if I'm to be honest. Doing a quest with AGGO cast, breaking a barrier that Kirito is facing, us spending a lot of time with YUNA, yet never letting Eiji know because he couldn't be bothered to mention who he had been searching for as if it was some mystery in the main campaign. But while there are easy nitpicks to be made in this DLC, like the one I just mentioned, compared to the base game story and the DLCs, Dissonance of the Nexus is miles ahead in terms of providing an entertaining story with a proper conclusion, and thanks to that, it allows the player to just enjoy the story by overlooking these small nitpicks, and that has 2 reasons. First off, the story actually has a proper establishment. Although the roots of the story does not generate from the efforts of the Fatal Bullet writers, the existence of Ordinal Scale provides a decent enough tension between Kirito and Eiji, as well as certain bits and pieces of development to them, which was extremely refreshing to see. And that tension and development exists because the game on numerous occasions confirms that the events of Ordinal Scale have already happened in the gameverse, thus giving us an established personality for Eiji rather than just blatantly introduce them without any information, as was the case with the previous DLC characters including Clarence and Shirley in DLC 2 that had at least 1 episode dedicated to them in the anime, but seemingly pulled out of nowhere so the audience did not have any material to relate to in their current personalities or partnership. Eiji, on the other hand, had the benefit of the entire Ordinal Scale, as well as the prologue to OS, Hopeful Chant, and the epilogue to OS, Cordial Chords. I'll also include a link for these beautiful side stories expanding greatly upon Eiji and Yuna's past and their future respectively that you can read for free, but speaking of these, the underlying plot explored in the true ending of DLC4 also works because instead of reinventing the wheel in an unimaginative way, they simply took the basis of Cordial Chords and used it to tell a compelling story and conclusion to Eiji and YUNA, which I'm certain would never be in any animated medium for fans to enjoy, especially for the Western audience since it was never even officially translated. Going to the second reason for the enjoyable story experience is that the characters, for the first time since the base game, actually feel like proper characters instead of soulless exposition machines. Even in the base game side stories, barely could you care for the characters, exasperated by the fact that they would be speaking to the mute OC most of the time as exposition tools. In DLC4, they are actually interacting with each other with their usual human-like personalities, struggles, emotions, fears, past, and our OC is just on a trip with these enjoyable characters. We don't need boring exposition as to who these characters are. We already had 4 games prior to these, we had 2 seasons and a movie of the anime with the 3rd season currently airing. We know these characters and we need them to act like themselves rather than being a shell of themselves, and that is exactly what this DLC achieves. As mentioned earlier, Kirito and Eiji's past together is used neatly as Kirito understands where Eiji was coming from since he was in the very same situation when he had lost Sachi. We see Kirito's past regrets being reignited as Sachi returns for the second time just to die and then be reanimated, which is a huge issue on its own, but instead of going off on a tangent, I'm just gonna direct you to my bloated Gameverse cast video. Click on the icon on the top right corner if you're interested, and it does a great job at normalizing Eiji and his actions back in OS as well. On the other hand, the alternative GGO cast, who had incredibly boring character events with the free Day 1 DLC, finally are back to their usual cheerful and colored personalities that we know from the main canon that are just outright incredibly fun to follow and listen to. But to recap, especially for those who skipped this bit due to spoilers, the story of DLC4 is much more enjoyable than the stories of previous DLCs and the main game by having a concrete, concise and complete story with accurate and enjoyable portrayals of these characters for once, while also bringing a beautiful story from the not even officially translated Cordial Chords to your screens that I still strongly recommend that you read via the fan translation by Gishimenas that you can find in the description. Sure, the true ending ends on yet another cliffhanger, even after we had one Alicization cliffhanger at the end of DLC 3, but I did not mind it all that much since the DLC already offered a complete story on its own rather than Itsuki running away in the base game and the already short story of Lier being butchered into 3 episodes that it didn't have content to fill. Considering I have covered the story and the characterization in this first bit, the only question you probably have right now is, well, I cleared the previous DLCs in 30 minutes, is this DLC so short as well? So moving on to actual gameplay content itself. Now, let me be honest with you, the content is nothing mind-blowing here. It doesn't come with a huge variety of things to do like Hollow Realization did, but it is much better than the previous 3 DLCs. It more or less takes around the same time as the 3 DLCs combined together if you're really moving with a fast pace, but this can be justified that the DLC is already cheaper than the Season Pass featuring the 3 DLCs. As expected from the game type it is, much like Destiny, yeah, we got reused enemies and only the campaign bosses are actually original models, but knowing the audiences of these games and being an avid Destiny player myself, I know this kind of thing is rarely an issue for these kinds of players. On top of it, the White Frontier feels really fresh instead of the dystopian city structures that we saw everywhere in Fatal Bullet so far, and while a minor praise, the dungeons actually have a slightly different look as well rather than being the very same boring dungeon that we have played since day 1. They have this lovely glass-like feel to it, fitting to the ice theme of the DLC in my opinion. Also, the dungeons are fairly lengthy but still are quite linear that you never get lost in them, despite the fact that you may have no idea where you are if you open the map, so it never really gets frustrating. We got gorgeously animated cutscenes that makes me wish we actually received more cutscenes, but isn't that the same sentiment I share after every single SAO game? If you haven't enjoyed the needless padding like finding random chests to progress through the story, good news for you, as those stuff are exclusively to be done by collectors post-game now. Your story progression is not locked behind mindless padding, just go through the dungeons, shoot bosses, have fun, and you'll be progressing. But as I said, there is a bunch of post-game collectibles that you can chase if you want to sink your teeth in, and I'm really glad they went this way, which I believe is the best of both worlds. Give the casuals who just want to enjoy the story a hassle-free path to do so, and provide the hardcore audience things to chase after they are done. But that is pretty much all I have to say about this DLC. It's easy to nitpick, but by providing a well-established and complete story supported by characters with enjoyable personalities, Fatal Bullet finally delivers something. A coherent and compelling story that you can have fun following without being bored. Now, since I know there is gonna be people asking things like, where do I get the wizard costume or Eiji's sword or Braveheart M costume, I'm gonna direct you to my Discord server. The invitation link is in the description, and we got plenty of collectors there that can help you with whatever you're searching for. I'm a completionist, not a collector per se, so I do not specifically care for where I can find the school uniform outfit, let's say, that I know I am never gonna use, but some lovely people in the community do, so come join the server and ask them instead. I hope this review of 4th DLC for Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet was helpful for you. If it was, please do like the video and subscribe for more. If you have specific questions about the DLC, do ask them in the comments and I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you back in my Alicization Explained series. Thanks for watching, a huge thanks to my patrons as always, and I'll see you next time. Stay cool.